Countries most likely to start World War III. Is it possible that World War III is right around the corner? If so, which countries have the most potential to spark it? Any guesses? Well, what we think has severe tension going on, and with that hypothesis, we'll say welcome to NEXTECH Ventures. Watch the entire video that was just released so you learn more about a handful of the primary perpetrators that might lead to an all-out world war. As 2022 draws to a close, the state of the globe appears more perilous than it has at any point since the late 1980s. Ukraine. The border between Russia and Ukraine in 2022 is very certainly going to be the most likely place for a major power conflict to break out. During the years 2021 and 2022, Russia made slow but steady improvements to its border defenses as Kyiv, Moscow, and Washington exchanged insults with one another. And in the early morning hours of February 24, 2022, Russia formally invaded Ukraine after having gathered up hundreds of thousands of troops at its border for several days before the invasion. Now that 6 months have passed since the conflict began, CIA Director William Burns revealed that U.S. intelligence has estimated that at least 15,000 Russians have died at the hands of Ukrainian forces. These forces have largely stalled a Russian army that has been riddled with poor tactical decisions and low morale. Russia's initial worries included the Ukrainian procurement and use of Turkish drones near its border areas, as well as a general rise in Ukraine's military capability. These fears were compounded by a general increase in Ukraine's military power, and the long-term challenge for Moscow is that it is unable to persuade Kyiv to abandon its pro-Western posture, which it has maintained since 2014. Russia has made it clear that it is seeking a long-term solution to the problems that have arisen in both Russia's relationship with NATO and the situation in Ukraine. Not only have the United States and NATO failed to provide a satisfactory response to these overtures, but they've also been conspicuously unable to ensure Ukraine's safety. Without directly intervening, the United States has provided support to Kyiv in a variety of ways. This includes the imposition of economic penalties against Russia, the delivery of military hardware to Ukraine, and the coordination of real-time intelligence gathering with Ukrainian armed forces. The utilization of any of these instruments, particularly in the event that they demonstrate some degree of efficacy on the ground, might result in a conflict between Moscow and Washington. Taiwan. The United States' long-simmering anxiety over the threat that China poses to Taiwan appears to have risen to a boil during the course of the last year. Over the course of the last decade, the Chinese military has undergone significant expansion, and it now represents a significant barrier to the participation of the United States. On the other hand, China's military has never been put to the test, and an amphibious attack across the Taiwan Strait would be one of the most technically advanced military operations in human history. There is a significant possibility of making an error in calculating. For the past 4 decades, the United States has created a robust economic relationship with the People's Republic of China, while also maintaining a policy of deliberate ambiguity in regard to Taiwan. This strategic ambiguity was created with the intention of removing the motivation for Taiwan to proclaim its independence while also preventing China from having a valid reason to invade. Some members of Congress have recently urged for an end to this strategy, as well as for a more robust endorsement of Taiwan's standing in the international community. There are a number of potential starting points for a conflict. The United States and Taiwanese armed forces might be taken by surprise by an attack that China could launch out of the blue. Alternatively, tensions on other elements of the relationship between the United States and China might convince Beijing of a change in the United States policy toward Taiwan, which could lead to a preemptive strike by China. Last but not least, Taiwan may try to make its independence a reality, which according to the majority of observers would result in China sending in the military. This scenario is the least likely to occur. In any scenario, it would be difficult for either side to control an escalation, and a dispute over who has access to Taiwan could easily escalate into a full-scale conflict in a short amount of time. Iran. Any sincere analysis of the United States' current policy toward Iran must now acknowledge that the choice made by former President Donald Trump to pull out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, more often referred to as the Iran nuclear deal, was a grave error. The attempt by the United States to enhance its level of military and economic coercion against Iran was unsuccessful. Iran has ramped up its attempts to develop nuclear weapons, while also enhancing the technological prowess of its missile forces and expanding the scope of its clandestine operations across the region. region. The United States has tripped during negotiations due to its reluctance to commit, and Tehran has taken a difficult approach, both of which have contributed to the failure of the negotiations to restore the status quo. The possibility of resorting to military action looms in the background in the event that diplomacy fails to bring Iran into some type of settlement. U.S. friends in Riyadh and Jerusalem may try to instigate a conflict, despite the fact that the current government of President Joe Biden does not appear to be very enthusiastic about the possibility of war. In a similar vein, if Iran were to come to the conclusion that an assault was unavoidable, it would be in a position to preempt using all of the resources at its disposal. Iran does not have the backing of a major great power, but a confrontation in the Middle East might offer up chances for Russia and China and other parts of the world. North Korea. In the last several years, there has been relative calm in the North Korean front since the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has been preoccupied with fighting the global avian flu pandemic rather than causing significant disruption on the world stage. In a similar manner, Japan, South Korea, and the United States have been content to let sleeping dogs lie and have instead focused their attention on more significant international and local issues rather than attempting to find a solution to the seemingly intractable Korean dilemma. The news surrounding North Korea, to the degree that it has made it into the mainstream media, appears to be mostly upbeat, with the United States and South Korea having reached a consensus on the chances for a formal end to the Korean War. Despite this, the issue with North Korea has not been settled as of yet. It is not a failed state, but it does confront significant issues on all fronts, including the economy, society, and politics. Throughout its history, Pyongyang has relied on acts of external belligerence to garner the attention of the international community and coerce a solution to its problems. Even though North Korea has not conducted a nuclear test in quite some time, the relative calm that has prevailed over the course of the previous few years might be severely disrupted if the country were to resume testing nuclear weapons and also conduct more tests of its missile arsenal. The Himalayas. Although tensions between China and India have subsided over the course of the last year, it is important not to overlook the fact that the border between the two countries has been the site of deadly clashes over the course of the past 2 years. Although India and China have made significant efforts to de-escalate tensions along their shared border, fundamental differences in land and disposition continue to exist. Both nations have been steadily working to develop infrastructure in the region that is capable of supporting fast military deployment in recent years. It does not appear that either Beijing or Delhi is especially interested in picking a fight with the other over control of inaccessible Himalayan regions. However, it is not difficult to imagine recurrent conflicts between them, which would then call attention to other troublesome parts of the relationship. Even though China has a significant advantage in terms of military might, recent developments look to favor India. The growing technology partnership between Washington and Delhi is a cause of concern for Beijing, particularly in light of the United States' increasing readiness to participate in long-term technological accords such as AUKUS. It is possible that China may become more prepared to take significant risks in order to fix the issue if it comes to realize that the rising tension along the border is part of a global strategy of encirclement rather than a bilateral problem with India. When will World War III begin? Over the course of the past 2 years, the global community has focused a significant portion of its attention on the COVID pandemic. Although this has not completely halted geopolitics in its tracks, it has most certainly caused world leaders to reevaluate their objectives. And even while the pandemic isn't completely over, it's starting to fade into the background hum of world politics. At the same time, big countries are readjusting their strategies and reiterating their priorities. Most significantly, we shouldn't forget to take into account the fact that the conflicts mentioned above are interrelated and reliant on one another. If there's a conflict with Iran, it'll have an effect on the decisions that are made all across the world, for instance. So that's going to do it for today. We'll be back soon, but until then, please like our video and subscribe to our channel.